In this video, I'm going to talk about the new album by Porcupine Tree called Closure Continuation. The album was released on June 24th, 2022, and this is their 11th studio album, their first album in 13 years. So this album has been one of the most anticipated progressive rock albums of the year, so let's talk about it now. This is a band I haven't really listened to before this album. I knew about the band because of Steven Wilson. He's become a very well-known producer of progressive rock bands. He produced 3 albums from one of my favorite bands called Opeth, including one of the most popular albums called Blackwater Park. And I will be making references to the band Opeth throughout this review because one of my first impressions of this band was that I heard like a similarity between them and Opeth, kind of more from their progressive rock songs with like the clean vocals. But going back to Steven Wilson, I also knew him as a guy who remastered a few classic prog rock albums from the 70s, such as Aqualung and by Jethro Tull. That's another band that's one of my favorites. So naturally, when I started to listen to the singles that were released for the new Porcupine Tree album, I instantly fell in love with this band, and I think this album is one of the best progressive rock albums of the year. So, like I said, this is the band's first album in 13 years, mainly due to Steven Wilson's career as a solo artist and the aforementioned remastering projects he's done. The album was actually written over the course of the last 10 years. The band kept quiet about it. The idea behind the title Closure Continuation is the uncertainty of whether the bands are, are they finally coming to a close or are they going to continue? This is a feeling that the band has had over the past decade. The standard album has 7 songs and 48 minutes, and that will be the focus of this review. But there's also a deluxe edition with an extra 3 songs, making it 10 songs of over an hour long. So the first song is Harridan. This was the first single released back in 2021. The song is driven by the bass guitar in the intro, and the bass is kind of funky. As the song moves along, they incorporate some psychedelic sounds and some jazz accompaniment. There are layers of vocals and that sounds very ominous at times. The song reminds me of a few 70s prog rock bands at times, especially like the band Yes, kind of like around the 3-minute mark. But for those of you who like Porcupine Tree as a metal band, they get heavy around the middle of the song and they have some like slow and doomy, brutal riffs alongside some spacey rock riffs. All this being mixed in with some tempo changes, and it makes the entire experience very interesting. It gets atmospheric around the 5-minute mark, and this was the part of the song reminded me of some of those like proggier songs by the band Opeth. They incorporate some electronic sounds and some female vocals at this point, and the song ends by going back to that kind of like Yes influenced prog rock sound with a softer acoustic guitar. The second single, released in March 2022, was called Of the New Day. This one starts with a soft acoustic intro with Steven Wilson singing. The song is very laid back, it's relaxing, it's dreamy, and it's warm. About halfway through the song, they incorporate some heavier guitars, and this part of the song reminded me a little of the band Rush, and again, like some of that proggier stuff by Opeth. The song then goes back and forth between the softer and heavier aspects of the song. Then there is Rat's Return. This was the 4th single, and according to Steven Wilson, Rat's Return is about, and I quote, politicians who express having an interest in the public, but when it comes down to it, only want to save themselves. So he also said it's about a feeling depressed about having lived through Brexit, Trump, and Boris Johnson. So the intro is fairly heavy, bringing back a sound like Opeth again. It gets very spacey and dreamy, kind of like sounding like a score for a science fiction film. The vocals are very dreamy, but the song goes back and forth between the heavy aspects and the cleaner and lighter parts. The heavier parts of the song are very complex and progressive. They have some odd time signatures, and they incorporate layers of male and female vocals. Then there is Dignity. This one has a slow intro. Kind of takes about a minute for the main melody to kick in, but this one has a soft acoustic side with some softer singing. Another laid back and relaxing type of song. You can hear soft keyboard melodies in the background with some vocal tracks that can be heard under the surface. The song is relaxing, a good song to listen to reduce tension or anxiety. and even has some parts that are so soft you can barely hear anything but just a few soft melodies. The guitar solo is soft with a jazzy feel to it. Towards the end of the song, they incorporate some slightly distorted guitars. That gives the song a classic rock feel, and at this point, the band starts to be heard in full force, kind of bringing in this full wall of sound. Then there's Heard Culling. This was the third single, and it was inspired by paranormal activity at Skinwalker Ranch, and also how people reacted to these types of situations. There were a few listeners who interpreted it about being about violence and paranoia in modern society. So, Steven Wilson did kind of appreciate that people interpret it like this. The song starts out with a spacey bass line and some keyboard textures. Given that the song deals with paranormal subject matter, the atmosphere around the song very haunting and eerie. They go back and forth between the heavy and the light in the song. They do this with many other songs. This is a song you need to listen to closely, as you can hear some sound samples in the background. And at other time there are these alien-like melodies that are mixed low into the background. The song ends with this slow and atmospheric droning outro. Walk the Plank is one very spacey and atmospheric. Reminded me a little of modern Radiohead with those layers of ambient sounds. The song is spacey and cloud-like. It feels like a dream with different layers of sound. It has a bass guitar playing some ominous riffs. This one is very different from the other songs as it doesn't have any guitar riffs in it, but it works well with the album as a whole and it does not feel out of place. And the final song in the album is called Chimera's Wreck. This is the longest song at close to 10 minutes. Steven Wilson wrote this song after the death of his father in 2011. The original lyrics were more specifically, about his father, but he changed the lyrics slightly to make it more about mortality in general. This one has a soft intro with some jazzy guitar playing, some atmospheric sounds. It starts to speed up as it progresses. It's a slow building song with some light and airy passages. Has some thick bass playing and complex drum patterns. This one has some complex progressive rock riffs, bringing in a sound reminiscent of some classic prog rock bands, and the guitar solo reminded me a little of Jimi Hendrix. The song continues with some cascading riffs that are kind of heavy, but also kind of memorable, and the song has a spacey and light outro. So in conclusion, I think this is one of the best progressive rock albums of the year. I may be new to this band, but it now makes me want to listen to their other albums, which I have already started to prior to this review. I listened to maybe the first few of them. It's an album that works very well as a whole. I don't think any of the songs stand out as being better than the others, but the album has a very nice flow to it and all the songs fit perfectly together. Nothing feels out of place here. It has so much variety in the rhythms and tempos, altering between heavy and light. You never feel bored while listening to this album. If you include all 10 songs, the album's over an hour long, but it never feels long. And that's a really sign of a great album. So my score for this is a 9.5 out of 10. And I think that's actually the highest rating I've ever given on this channel. So let me know what you think in the comments. Up next, I have a collaborative review with the new Coed and Cambria with a Chill Dude on the Couch review, and that will be on his channel. It should be up by now. I will be sharing that on my community tab. And next week, I will be doing my top 10 albums of June, and a few more anniversary reviews, and probably another album versus album of a classic rock band that's coming up. Please remember, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.